with High Five Practice. Thanks all of you for joining us on this segment where we get to eat together every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Time. Only as you guys know, when I say eat, I mean something a little different than food. EAT is our formula to generate loyal patients for life, and it stands for educate, automate, and target. But by all means, I know this is your guys' lunch hour, so go ahead and eat it up. And we're going to spill you up with some knowledge, all things dental. And who better than my guest today? I have a very special guest, Genevieve Poppe. She's the CEO of Poppe Practice Management. And she's going to talk about patient calls, how to increase case acceptance in the office, on the phone, and some amazing tips about mind shift and how she implements what she implements the most successful practices she has today. So Genevieve, yay! Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I hope that you cannot hear this. We've timed this for the fire alarm check, outside. So there's a siren going right now outside my building, but I hope you guys don't have to hear it. If you can, it should be over shortly.
Alarms,
terrible timing. It goes off at noon, the first Wednesday of every month, and I just didn't even think about it. So, anyway.
Safety first.
Start to this segment. But yeah, I am excited to always talk case acceptance because really, fixing your case acceptance, improving your case acceptance, even fractionally in a dental office, not only helps more of our patients get the care that they want and need, it's a significant revenue boost for not a lot more work. So it helps us to be practices that are not so reliant on new patients, but really know how to take good care of the patients that we have. And then our new patients are creating growth instead of just filling in blanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just being a part of making it easier for them to accept treatment. And what I love about what you talk about is even just as simple as the verbiage, how it's being communicated, how the patient understands. We like to always talk about the control that the patient has. And then if they feel like they have more control, therefore they'll accept it because they don't understand it's over their head. So I love how you always talk about the mind shift and how to make it easy and just the verbiage that you use. So what are some tips that you give people as far as
let me say more about that because I teach a lot. Can you hear this?
I can hear it, yeah, but it's okay. It's not it's not overpowering your voice.
All right, okay. So get my mind right now. I teach a lot of verbiage when it comes to treatment acceptance, and I'll definitely share my best words and my favorite things to say any day of the week. I'll give you guys my best tips today, but I think that the main reason that I am good at case acceptance is the way I think about it. And that's really what I try to teach people. And by that, I mean, I don't believe that most patients walk to the front desk not wanting to do their treatment. I believe that most people want to do the treatment they need, and that dentistry has produced a system where we present treatment and fees sort of with this idea like, I'm going to share this information. We'll see if you want to do it. And what I really want them to think about it is like, let's figure out how we do this for this patient. And so when people walk up front, I just 1,000% believe that they're going to do this treatment. And it's my job to help them figure out how, not throw up barriers and help them decide if they're going to do it. So it's that shifting to how we do this instead of if we're going to do this, thinking that in and of itself, even without perfect words, really changes the way you present, the way you stay in a conversation that can feel uncomfortable. And then when you add some good verbiage on top of it, you really have something, going for you in the treatment acceptance department.
I love that because if you're already putting that negative tone on it and you're making them question their own decisions, why would you plant that seed? Why would you say, if you want to go, no, it's been proposed. If there's a reason for it, it's not like, oh, patient has control, but it really comes down to they came to you because they're the experts and they want to know your opinion. So if you doubt that, you're decreasing your chances of acceptance.
Right. It comes from a place of really well-intentioned thought, and that, most people in those seats don't want to be pushy. They don't like the word sales in dentistry. And so it's made us very tentative in our language around money. And we have started to develop as an industry an insurance mindset. So we always will say things like, our patients will only do what their insurance covers. Our patients want to know exactly what their insurance covers. And the reality is we've taught them that. We've done that in our own insecurity about money. We've focused on what insurance covers. We've taught them that we can do a pre-authorization. And then we make ourselves right about it. And then we actually do build up patient bases that ask us questions about exactly what insurance will cover. But really, most people, when they're saying that, they're saying, help me understand this and help me figure this out. They're not saying, I need to know down to the 80 cents on the dollar exactly what my insurance is covering. That's just what we hear. And because we focus so much on getting the insurance right, we lose sight of the treatment and creating understanding around all of the treatment and then giving them options to make it feel affordable.
Oh my gosh. It's rooted from what we taught them. Like, it's so true, or what is being taught. And so if you're asking them those questions every time, you're training them instinctively to just ask those questions. It's so true.
It's deeply rooted. I mean, it's because we want to be, we've actually created sort of like, I want to say it's like a generation of people working in a dental office, in that front office side that have been taught to become insurance experts, not treatment planning experts. And there's a huge difference between those two things. A lot of treatment coordinators will kind of fight me on this, that they think the most important aspect of case acceptance is understanding benefits. But frankly, it's one of the smallest factors in case acceptance. If you can get people on board for the entire treatment plan, understand the basic contribution of insurance, you'll get bigger case acceptance, you'll get more complete case acceptance instead of what I tend to see, which is a lot of, we'll start with the fillings. Let's just do this because insurance covers the most, and then we'll pre-auth this thing. And we're just sort of taking our insecurity about money, turning any simple question about cost and sort of putting insurance between it and assuming that it's a problem for people, and really generally not. I'm not saying that nowhere that all patients can afford dentistry, but more of them can and will afford dentistry than we think. Right. And that's not just a local thing. I mean, I work with offices everywhere. I was actually just taking a look at, I got my mid-year reports from all of my dental intel clients, right? So not all of my clients are on it, but it's kind of fun to see like how people are up from last year. Of course, it's easy to be up from last year because we had the shutdown at the beginning of last year. Right. But like my average office right now is up between 45 and 65%. Wow. Some of them over 100% from last year. And a lot of that, I can tell you, comes from focusing in on not new patient growth. Even though I do a lot with new patients, right? People come to me all the time to help them with new patient phone calls and new patient stuff, but it's focusing on maximizing what we have. And you pair that with a great automated system, a great follow-up system. It's just really critical that we don't kill it before it leaves. Because if we get them to a no before they go, right? If we've already got them convinced they can't do this, then no amount of follow-up calls or automated follow-ups will help them change their mind. Right. So the conversations that we have both in the first phone call and then, as we're presenting treatment and fees to begin with, are just really, I think we underestimate them. We don't provide nearly enough training for them. And when we do, we focus on the wrong thing.
Yeah. And this brings a good point up too, because even when you said like rooting at what we educate our patients is bringing them the questions, that's also kind of what we're doing when you're talking about new patients. We find all the time, because that's our niche, is your existing patients and making sure that you're educating them and you're, taking care of them, making it easy for them to act through emails and text messages. And it's so hard to get that across sometimes because the focus in dental is new, which absolutely you need new patient acquisition. But I think what you kind of brought up too, it kind of goes for us in dental as well, is like, it's always been taught that new patients are your only focus. And there's so much opportunity with your current patients, your current treatment that already has been proposed. You've already done the hard work of making sure the patient has been proposed the treatment. They understand what it is. But then I know the biggest thing that you talk about is the handoff, right? And then it goes from the doctor to another person. But it's realizing how important that is. You didn't just get them as a new patient for them to walk out the back door. You got them as a new patient to propose treatment and to help them and to make sure that they do have the services and the treatment done for them to live happy and healthy. So I think there's that loss of, letting people know there's so much opportunity if you educate your patients on those chances and what their treatment is and why that's important, and not focus on money, or address the questions about money head on and make sure that they understand their options. But it's not, the focus isn't around money. To your point, that's always sometimes lost. Like, I might not be able to afford it because you're basically insinuating I can't afford it, right? Like, but maybe I can if you tell me how I can break up payments, or if you have a membership plan, or, like, what are my other options? I wouldn't know that if I wasn't in dental. And I would hope that offices educate that, and talk about that.
I think that it's not so much that they don't ever offer it up. It's just what I watch happen is a lot of people in dentistry are just super conflict averse. They're caretakers, they're high empathy people, they're conflict averse. So something that feels like a no or a pushback is uncomfortable for them. And so what they're doing almost always is preparing for the worst case scenario. They take the worst instance of the one person not understanding their bill, and then they apply that type of financial explanation to everybody else so that we never have another person who's mad about $17 ever again. And, we take the worst scenarios and then we build forward conversations. We're like always prepped for the worst. And so even when there isn't an objection, what I'll observe, and people don't realize this until I catch them, I record them, or whatever I have, I just observe them. What a lot of teams will do is actually throw out the objections almost to get them over with, right? So they'll be like, but insurance doesn't cover very much of this, so I don't know if you want to do it. And they will actually put out the problem there. Then it feels like
so true. Yeah.
And but they're just doing it to get it over with because they don't want to run into it later and then have a person be mad at them about it. And so they often create obstacles where there wouldn't have been one, where that wasn't really a problem to start with. And it's human nature. It's like a protective thing for something that feels uncomfortable. They don't want to get in an uncomfortable situation, so they just control it. So they just get that stuff out. Even though a lot of times it wouldn't have been an issue or wouldn't come up. And so then when we throw it out, it brings up things like, well, what do you mean? Well, what exactly is that going to? And then it further supports our people only want to do insurance covers. They only want to do they want to know exactly what this is going to be. And it's a lot of times it comes out from the order in which we discuss these things. So it's really backwards, but I totally understand it. And it sometimes takes this crazy leap of faith for people to try it a different way. And so that's where I teach this idea of keeping it simple, right? When we're presenting insurance and money, you really have to keep that language simple and then answer questions, because different people will have different objections. People will have different things that might hold it up. So when I present any treatment plan, especially with insurance, people will come up to the front desk, and I might be in a consult room, I might be at the front desk, I'll have the treatment plan printed, and I will slide it across so you have all the information. But I'm not going to focus on the individual lines. I'm not going to focus on what insurance does and doesn't cover per thing and where the deductible is going to apply. And I'm not going to give this well-intentioned insurance explanation. I'm just going to say, okay, Abby, to get you all fixed up on the upper right, it's going to be $1,500. Looks like we should get about $800 from your insurance. So I'm going to have you take care of $700 when you come in. And then if there's anything left over after insurance pays me, I'll settle up with you then. How does that sound? And I leave it there.
Yeah.
Right? Most people will actually say, that sounds fine. That sounds good. Let's do it. And that's it. That's where it happens, right? And some people will be like, oh, that sounds like a lot, right? That sounds like kind of a lot. And I'll say, oh, but would it be easier if we split it up into a couple payments, or we can do payments as low as this much with, our financing partner Care Credit, right? We can give them options if they need them. Some people might say, how do you know how much insurance is going to contribute? And then I can say, well, we never can tell for sure. I can tell you the total is this much. We should get roughly this much. And, that's why we'll start with this here, and whatever's left over, we'll settle up. Most people, if they understand the whole, like the total, they're not as afraid of it. I think where we lose people is when we're like, it'll probably be about this much, but that's an estimate. We don't know how much it will actually be. And then
It's scary.
Yeah. That's like, okay, but when they understand the total is 1,500, like they can wrap their head around the whole thing. And that's when they get a bill for that little bit left over. They're not mad. They anticipated it. It was when we focus in on trying to have these exact, I'm going to have you pay $632.50, like that's where people get upset. And so the really key thing there is keep it simple and end it with a how does that sound? Because a lot of times we give like big long explanations and then we'll say something like, do you have any questions? And if you are a person who asks that, what you'll notice is a lot of people will say no. Like they can't, because it's not that they're not feeling something, it's that they can't formulate a question out of it. It's not really a question, it's a feeling. And so if you say, how does that sound? It allows people to not really have to think about it. They can just say, oh, that sounds expensive. Oh, I was hoping insurance would pay more. They can gripe if they have a gripe. And that's okay. You have to learn to not be afraid of that. I don't always love to hear that I have to spend $700 on a dental visit. I don't love to hear that I have to spend thousands of it, but
yeah.
Right? I still am not going to, so it's okay to let that out and to not just take that as a no. Just sit in that for 1 second, let them feel that way and offer them a solution. What do we have for payment plans? How can we phase this out for them? If you can do that in response to how they're feeling, it's way more helpful to them. And they're able to actually process all of this information, say what they're thinking, then your solution makes sense. Instead, we try to say every single thing they need to know based on every terrible conversation we've ever had, and then expect them to sort of sort through it. And that just doesn't work very much of the time.
I love how you're opening up the conversation too. It's making that heard moment happen. Like you can ask, how does that sound? You're creating that relationship. Like you're part of this. You're, like this is your time to talk or say. But to your very point, that's a lot of pressure in one spot. Like feeling like if you have a script, if you have something that's going to help you go along that, but making sure it's open-ended, making sure that you can have those conversations, but also I feel like a lot of times you're going to have the same questions. You're going to have the same things come up. So knowing those, but then of course, I'm going to bring up emails and text messages. That's a great opportunity to also communicate those. So when they leave the chair, all your points are made because they might have forgotten it when they left. They might have had a really great conversation with you in the office and been like, oh yes, this makes sense. How does this sound? It sounds expensive. You brought up all these examples, but maybe they're thinking about money still, or it makes sense. And then by the time they leave and their spouse asks them about it, it doesn't make sense anymore. Right. So having that verbiage in front of you and being like, hey, remember we talked about this, and you can automate that. You can make sure that that same message is happening to make it smooth for your team, but then also the patient has that conversation, whether it's with you or not. They have answers that are made. They have the
answers and these talking points. I think also what's important to communicate in that automation is not just, as sometimes as dental people, we sort of focus on the consequences, right? Like, here's why you should do this. Here's our education can overdo it without, it can put people feeling like blamed or embarrassed or shamed. And what we don't serve up enough of is how they can do it. Like, so here's options, right? Let's get started with this, or, we can do this for payments as low as this much. We don't stick in those discomfort, those uncomfortable moments long enough to help people find a way to do it. And a lot of times we misinterpret that first grumble from them as them being mad, or they're not going to do it, or they only care about money, or we get super snarky about this because it's our problem in dentistry. Like, we're not good at this. So what we do is we blame our patients, and we say, like, they're insurance-driven patients, or my favorite is they don't value their teeth, right? Like, isn't that such a snobby thing to say? Like, that's a huge assumption. That is a huge assumption about them. Maybe they do really value their teeth, and they feel like what we've offered up to them is impossible because we didn't stay in it. We didn't let them say that that's not on their realm of possibility. And shame on us for being so judgy and not helping them figure out how to do it. I just really think it's the how. Like if everybody listening could just change their mindset today to how can this person do this? I think you would find people's response to you so totally different. Not why you should do this, not if you should do this, but like how. Let's figure out how to do it. I don't think most people show up for their dental appointment knowing they're going to get an exam, asking for our opinion about how they can be healthy with the intention to not do it. Like, I just don't think that's really the common position of most humans.
Yeah. And to your very point, we have the caretaker mindset. Utilize that to its advantage. Not that I think it's always key to make sure you don't just assume what people are going through or have, but to your point of asking the how and trying to understand. Everybody's different, but yet the same at the same time. So making sure that you are opening that conversation and being, why are you overwhelmed? How can we help you? How can we make sure we get the smile that you want? How can we get you healthy now so you don't have to worry about it later? Making sure that they feel part of it is so key. And if they're still confused, that's not the patient's fault. That's your fault for the delivery of how you're communicating it. And it's just, it's simple tweaks to make to say it differently.
It's easier for us to believe that they don't care than it is for us to believe that we're not good at this, right? Yes. And that's just the reality, and that's not a slight at anybody. That's talking about all of the way we communicate in dentistry is about the whys. It's all educating people, and then when we get to the money, it becomes an if, and we are so uncomfortable having that discussion and like helping people. You know, I've talked to people who are like, I will never apply for financing with a patient because if they get declined, you know, I'm so embarrassed. And I'm like, well, if they get declined, they're embarrassed. You know, what else can we do for them? So, I mean, just like, to me, you see this, you see data of unscheduled treatment.
Yes.
Most of it is not cosmetic. 95% of it, you know, of the stuff that's going undone in our offices is not elective stuff. And so a lot of times when I'll print like unscheduled treatment reports for people, they're like, well, this is all people who have multiple options, and this is all cosmetic stuff, and this is like the stuff we want to throw out. But that's not really true. And I can tell you it for sure. I've dug through it hundreds and hundreds of times. A lot of what's not getting done is stuff that our patients need and is only getting worse for them. And so I don't feel like it's pushy. I feel like it's helpful. And I think if you're uncomfortable with money, that's just a different way to feel about it. And feeling about a different way about something can be so helpful in your own comfort in approaching it. And the outcome can just be, it can be so dramatic, you know, like people actually cringe when I told them that I once called a young girl's grandma to see if she would co-sign on care credit for her. And they're like, what? And I'm like, listen, I had a young girl that fell and broke her front teeth. I know that any grandma on the planet would want to help their granddaughter fix their front teeth again. You know, like, I don't think that's being pushy. The granddaughter cried and thanked me. And, you know, I mean, we've got her fixed up. And I think
like you provide
somebody willing to just stay in it with you. Yeah. And, you know, it's so easy to assume the worst of people in those moments. But it's just, if you can push through your own discomfort, you will find that people are so grateful when they get fixed up, and they're so committed and loyal to you after that, that it's a really huge practice builder to help people through difficult moments like that.
Yeah, building trust. That's all you're doing. You're creating a relationship. You're there for them. And I love that, because it's just building that relationship. It's making sure they feel heard. It's opening the conversation. We notice this with automated messages. They get we go in there to their patient communication software, whether that's NextHealth, RevenueWell, whatever, Lighthouse. We go in and we see less than 10% is being used. And because that one patient, maybe three, called in and was really upset and said, you're blowing me up. I don't want any more of these messages. Turn it off. So then they go in and they assume, just like with your finances, you had a bad complaint, you had a bad response.
Yep.
So then you just stop everything. And it's like, that's such a disservice to all of your patients. Instead, you could have sat there and said, I totally understand. I want to make sure you have the best experience possible. what messages do you want to get? Do you want to get your appointment reminders? Oh, yes. Do you want to know when you're due for an appointment? Yes. Do you want to know when we have, about Susie, our new employee? No. Okay, I'll take you off these promotional messages. Like
it's that worst case scenario thinking that I'm talking about, right? We take the one thing and then we adjust the masses to the few, and it's not the logical thing to do, but it is the common reaction. Like, we don't want anybody else to be mad.
Yes.
And I find that a lot of people, when they say people are getting mad, it's an instance of one.
Yes.
It's
that's
like,
what I always ask. How many people are upset? Like, that's always, because also in our case,
it'll come to you like, people are really mad about this. And I'm like, okay, well, how many people?
Yes.
Because actually, I'm actually happy if my messaging is consistent enough that it annoyed somebody. Right?
Try.
Right.
That works.
At least you called me, right? Now that I've got you, can I just get you scheduled?
It's an opportunity. Like,
as soon as I have that next appointment scheduled, those things will stop. So let's just do it.
There's a reason I'm just bugging you right now.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's understanding your patients and treating them as individuals to make sure that can be executed, whether it's the status of their recall or their treatment acceptance. I think that it goes across the board, as far as making sure that they feel heard and that you're relating to them.
Totally.
Yeah. So, okay, you kind of brought this up, and I'm curious, since we talk about patient retention a lot, why do you feel that it's like typically lost? Like, why do you feel that retention sometimes isn't the focus? Because that you go into these practices and you talk about how to communicate to the current patients and how to keep the existing patients.
Mm-hmm.
But why do you think it's lost sometimes in dental?
That's a really good question. And I think the answer is stuff that people might not have on their radar. One is that, and I say this with great affection for automated systems, is that that's not in and of itself enough. So it's like, we have this set it and forget it. Somebody set up patient communication software 3 years ago, and now that's recared. Like, that's it. That's literally the only effort being made. No, we don't even know if it's working. Sometimes people are like, yeah, I don't even know who knows the password to this thing anymore. I mean, it's that underutilized, right? And so there's that part of it. But then I think the other thing is, it's really interesting. I see this as a symptom in practices that are busy, right? So if their schedule is full, then they're not calling recare.
Yes.
So what happens is their practice stays exactly the same size forever, right? So new patients fill in, the schedule's full, so I'm not calling anybody who's overdue. We just stay the same. And I don't know that that's really on the radar of a lot of owners or a lot of practice managers, that if you're seeing 40 new patients a month and you're not ultimately adding hygiene time, you're not growing, right? You're just staying the same. You're churning, which means you are suffering patient attrition. And that's an expensive way to stay afloat. It's a really inefficient way to stay afloat. And most practices that I know are not looking to remain stagnant. And so if they have this idea that if they are full, they're good. And that's a really common way of thinking over and over again in dental offices. And so there's sometimes, the other thing I'll see is that they're afraid to open up more time, because one, it means they'd have to work on reaching out to their existing patients. And so they like the feeling of being full. They prefer it to feeling open. And people this is a strange little side effect, but I'm noticing it all the time lately. People will say, well, I can't open up hygiene time because we have cancellations every day. And I want this to be super clear. Cancellations are a different problem than patient attrition and patient. So if you don't have space to put new and existing patients, you are keeping your practice. If you've had the same number of hygiene appointments every year for the past 15 years, your practice is probably in roughly the same shape it has been for the last 15 years. And it's why practices hit the ceiling all the time, because they don't understand that to grow, you have to open more time. You have to open more ops. You have to if you want to be in growth mode, you have to be considering holding on to patients, adding new ones, and that's going to require an expansion of what you have to offer.
Yeah. And I love that you say that too, because a lot of times we ask patient or new clients when they are onboarded with us, their goals. And usually goals that come up, and I don't know if you notice this too, Genevieve, it's, oh, our new patient goal is 50 or 30 or whatever, right? And I'm like, okay, so what about locations? What about operatory? Like, are you looking to expand? Do you want to add new technology? Do you want an associate at it? It's like thinking, some of the, a lot of people are thinking that way, right? But there's also the times that it's like,
a lot of times when I hear that, it's a symptom of people not being very effective or doing a great job of holding on to their patients. Because if you want 50 new patients a month, but you're not planning to add time or you don't have room to expand, what's going on there? Right? Are you planning to lose 50 patients a month? Right?
Right.
Once your practice is a certain size, that doesn't make sense anymore, right? So it makes sense for a brief period while you're growing. And I think what the argument that people give me is like, our patients are pretty much all restored. All of our patients are pretty much restored. So
I love that.
we need more new patients who need work. And in some practices, there's an element of a healthier restored patient base. But almost always, even in the most established practices, there's an unscheduled treatment situation happening, which means there are people in the practice that need work. And so what I would tell people that are really focusing on that new patient side, and again, this is not to say you don't need new patients, but that if you put that same effort into your existing patients, you probably have better case acceptance. And also, study after study will show you that case acceptance from existing patients is significantly higher by percentage than it is from new patients. And so you have to see more new patients and present more treatment plans to new patients than you do with your recare existing patients. And so it's really significant how, that's a good fact, you don't have to move the needle a lot on your retention to make a huge difference in the way your practice is growing. And the efforts that it takes are not crazy. They really aren't. It's just that right now, I promise you, in a lot of offices watching this, nobody is really paying attention to retention at all.
No. And I mean, it's why we are a business, so it's fine. But at the same time, no, it's not.
For you, yeah.
Yeah, this is great. But and these are the stats that we use all the time. So you're 5 to 25 times more expensive than retaining an existing one instead of acquiring a new patient, and you're 14 times more likely to get an existing patient back. And I think what's crazy is the amount of conversations we have with dental practices on a day-to-day, and how many people's perspective that are like, oh, that's interesting. And it's like, that's so crazy to me. Like, this should be the first thing, is existing patients and taking care of them and educating them and making sure your team knows how to convert them to increase case acceptance. So the appointments that you have, they're higher value cases that you can actually implement. So you're doing less work and you're getting your goals more, or you're able to take care of patients that really, truly need it. But there's that scared moment that they don't want to start that conversation. They don't want to reach out and feel like they're bombarding people. They don't want to, they didn't have the conversation in the office, so now they feel like they lost them. Or to your point, they're churning out the same patients and thinking like, oh, well, they're healthy. I'm keeping them healthy. I'm doing my job. Sure, but you might be avoiding something instead of hitting it head on and bringing everybody value that way. So
well, I think partly what feeds that thinking, especially in owners, is that they don't always have a great handle on their own unscheduled treatment statistics. And if you ask any team member, like every time I talk to office managers, treatment coordinators, and I say, like, what's your case acceptance like? What they will tell me is it's good, pretty much everybody's schedules. In their head, that is, and we always, and it pretty much everybody might, right? But pretty much everybody is 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, right? And a lot of those people are scheduling one thing. They're not scheduling their whole treatment plan. They're like, let's just do the filling because you've got good coverage on that. Like, I watch that happen all the time. I actually watch treatment coordinators say, let's just do this and minimize, start with the easiest thing to gain acceptance on, because basically it's like punting, right? Like I can just get this going. And they'll even say, let's just do, like it's the least amount of conflict that keeps something going, but then cases stop all the time in the middle. So people have no sense, they can't keep track of it mentally. They have no sense of how much unscheduled treatment is actually in their patient charts. They're really not totally aware of it. And if you schedule that one thing, and then we bring them to the front desk while they're numb and they just had a dental appointment, it's like not a super fun moment. I don't love that. And then you're like, do you want to schedule your next one? Like, I might be like, you know what, I'll call you. And then guess what? I don't call you. And then nobody ever calls me. And, it happens every day.
Yeah.
Every single day, people fall through the cracks in our office. And it's not because people don't care about it. It's just impossible to really keep track of. And I think this is the strangest, it's not strange. This is the universal reaction, is that when I present numbers like this, the first thing that people want to do is qualify them or tell me why they're wrong. So this is, a lot of these patients have multiple treatment plans. A lot of these patients, this is elective stuff. A lot of these treatment plans, there's old stuff in here. Like, yeah, okay, they're for sure, all of that's true. But also, do you think it's 80% true? Do you think it's 70% true? Because if this is 70% true, you have $1 million sitting here. 50% true, we've got $500,000 sitting here, just in the last 12 months. And so I just encourage people not to feel like guarded or defensive when you look at that number. I look to it for opportunity, not as a thing that needs to be attacked or, defended. And that's the first thing that I see people want to go to, is like explaining why this is wrong and why it needs to be cleaned up. And my point is like, maybe this is a list of people to reach out to. These seem like opportunities, not to clean up. I'd rather you not spend your time cleaning up. I'd rather you spend your time reaching out to people who need to get back in here, and that's, it's strange. It elicits a really defensive response a lot of the times. And when people are in a defense mode, we're not taking action and we're not doing the best for people.
It's so true. And even, I never even thought of it that way. You're chipping away at something, but then you find out, like, I could have had this all done in one appointment, but you decided that for me. Like, not, and speaking of defensive, like that's defensive right there.
We do decide that for people. We assume a lot about people. And I can just tell you, in years and years of treatment acceptance and treatment presentation, what I know for sure is that you can never tell. Like, I've had farmers out of the field pull out cash out of their overalls, and I've had guys in a 7 Series BMW ask if they can pay $50 a month. Like, you don't know what's going on with people, and if you think you do, and sometimes the longer we know our patients, the more guilty we are. They said no that one time, so now we don't want to ask them again, or he's not ready to do this. We shut it down a lot.
Yeah.
I watch it happen all the time, from operatory to the desk. So when the doctor says you need this thing, typically the patient will sort of gripe to the hygienist or assistant, like, oh, I can't believe I need this, and da-da-da. Then by the time it walks up front, it turns into like, Bill needs a crown, but he doesn't want to do it. So I've got no shot at it now, right? Yeah. And you've got no shot at it now, because we've already decided,
Thanks for just thoroughly sharing.
Put a note in the chart: patient needs crown but doesn't want to do it. And so then the next time they come around, we won't even mention it, because we don't want to. It's. I mean, I sound like I'm griping, but it's just, to me, it's really sad, because we don't approach conversations with patients because of our own discomfort, because we're afraid of it, and that's what we're there to do.
And what are tips that you have to get out of? I know that's hard, and I know every individual has different things, but what have you seen work to get people out of that? I know you said the how, but like, that's a hard thing to uncover, especially if you've been doing it for like 20, 30 years. How in the heck are you going to stop doing that? How are you going to break that?
A lot of clinical team members do not realize what they're doing. And weirdly, I don't think the treatment coordinators or office managers understand it fully either. They just take it at face value. So they don't say, hey, stop doing that. But we just sort of accept it. Like, okay, well, you don't want to do it. I find it really helpful. One, when you kind of point that out to most clinicians, they actually will recognize that they do it. They'll almost always say, "Oh God, I totally do that." So, because they're trying to be nice, they're doing it to make this patient feel more comfortable. And so I find it really helpful to give them something else to say. They just don't know what else to say. So I'll just tell them to say, "Oh my gosh, I totally understand. You know what? Go talk to Genevieve. She can help you figure out how to fit this in your budget." Just give them a different thing to say that's a solution instead of their natural desire to like sort of validate this person and shut this down. That's helpful. So like if you're getting that, in your handoff at the front desk, talk to them, talk to your assistants, talk to your hygienists, bring it up in your next team meeting, talk to your doctor and say, "Listen, you can't bring this to me as a no, right? We might need to find a solution for him, but don't bring it already done. That's impossible."
That's so cute. Like opening that line of communication with your team too. I had Kevin last week and we were talking about culture and, how to implement those open conversations. And I think that is crucial, especially even if there's been a team member, maybe the hygienist has been there for 30 years and the front somebody new and they're trying to do something different, but they, you're kind of, "Oh, but I'm the new person." So it's making sure that I love that. Just bringing it up to the team. Like, "I know you don't mean to be doing this, but this is how it's coming to me."
They totally don't mean to be doing it. I promise you. Every person I ever bring that up to, they're like, "Oh yeah, I do that." They can hear themselves doing it.
Right.
And what's strange is there's so many things like that happen in a dental office that I think we train people very positionally in dental offices. So they don't always piece together their role to another. They're not always like, it seems obvious that, somebody at the front or an office manager should say to a doctor, like, "Hey, we need to expand hygiene time so that we can accommodate more patients." Or if we want to see 50 new patients a month, we need to have 50 spaces to see them. And we don't have that, these are things that seem apparent, but I think our dental teams, a lot of times, especially up front, are spread really thin and often exist in sort of a survive the day mode. And so they're not thinking about that stuff. And, our owners don't always have it on their radar. They're just like, "Well, we're booked out 3 months, we're good." Like, they're happy, but they don't understand, that they're stuck, that they've hit a ceiling and their practice isn't getting any bigger from this point.
Yeah. And really, it's everybody's in your own role too. So bringing to light what your role and what you need from the team or the patients. And that's great. Opening that communication of the owner's not thinking about it. Maybe that's your opportunity to bring it up and in those morning huddles or in those open conversations that you have with the team to make sure everybody is on board. Because you can't get mad at them if they don't know. Again, same with the patient. If they don't know, it's not their fault. You need to be the one to tell them. You need to be the one to educate them to make sure that they do know, to keep everybody happy and healthy and what have you. So
totally. There's so many factors to case acceptance and to retention and to really growing a practice versus just staying busy that are not easy to like see black and white day to day. Like, you have to know what you're looking for. And I also think that we elevate a lot of people into office manager roles that don't necessarily know that their doctor would want to hear or know those things from them. They don't, it doesn't occur to them to bring that to their doctor because they think their doctor, it's just like neither one of them are really thinking about it. But I promise you, most docs would be thrilled if you were thinking about their business. If you were saying, "Hey, I really think, we've got this many unscheduled patients, and we're averaging this many new patients a month. I think we need at least a day a week of hygiene added." Like that's well, you're and you can do that math for them. And I just encourage people to like take a moment to get out of the weeds and look at that stuff without defense, without feeling like you have to, like it's wrong or bad. It's just an opportunity. Like, chances are your practice is already doing pretty good, but there's always something else that can be done to take it to the next level.
Yeah. Oh, I could talk to you for hours, 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 and I love it. And it's like, I love picking your brain because it's so informative in just a way that you can't preach it without doing it yourself. And Genevieve, you definitely do it. You get in the mindsets of these offices, you help them, you make sure that they are set for success, but you don't just go in and tell them. You figure out what their actual problems are, and you implement all kinds of different strategies to set them up for success. So I thank you for joining me today. If anybody,
I can talk about this stuff all day.
Same. And I always love talking about it with you. If there is anybody out there that wants to work with you, Genevieve, or wants to pick your brain as well, how can they contact you?
Well, you can go to my website, or you can call or text me. So backwards. You can go to my website. There's actually a link there to schedule a call with me. Sometimes that's the easiest. Otherwise, you can call or text me, and I still actually answer my phone unless I'm on the phone, which is sometimes some days busy, but I'm easy to find, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only Genevieve Poppe on Facebook, so you can find me that way as well.
Google, yeah.
Okay. LinkedIn, any of those places. I'm very accessible. Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining me today for lunch. I can't wait to have you back in the near future. Everyone, thank you for joining us as well. We'll see you next week for lunch at 12 p.m. Central Time right here on Let's Eat with Abbey. Next week, I'll be joining Katie at Smile Advantage. She's going to talk about the advantages of a membership program with patient communications. So we'll see everybody next week. And Genevieve, yeah.
Okay. Have fun with Katie. All right.
Well, thanks again, and have a good day, everybody.